Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today I want to talk about a topic that kind of has been swimming around in my mind a bit, and the topic is about self-improvement or obsessive betterment. And if you're an artist, you probably find yourself comparing your work to other people's work. Maybe you compare your work to what you did yesterday, what you did a week ago, what you did last year. And I think all of these things can be really useful and helpful, but there's also a point where it can get obsessive. And when it crosses over to that point, I don't think that is very helpful. I often will get asked when I'm being interviewed on a podcast, what's your favorite project you ever made? And that's a kind of a tricky question because I don't know, I don't really think about my projects much after I make them. I'm more interested in what I'm going to do next. I'm more excited about what I'm going to do next. So I always say my next project is my favorite because that's what I'm excited about doing right now. And in this day and age where we are, as artists, and even as people, we're kind of pushed into sharing the highlight reel, sharing the best parts of our lives, coming up with something good to share, or maybe sharing nothing at all because we don't feel like our lives are interesting enough, our lives are good enough, our work is good enough, and we're either living in that anxiety of push, 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 get something new, get something better, get something greater, or just kind of stand back and be like, nope, it's not good enough, so I'm not even going to bother with adding to the noise. And I think that's really too bad because when we only see the best of the best out there, we don't see the nuance, we don't see the mess on the table, we don't see the clutter in the background, we don't see the work in progress. And the work in progress is so important. I remember when I was teaching in person full-time, I would always have a painting that was in progress on my easel in my studio downtown. And my students would see it every week when they came in. They would see what I'm working on and they could see how it would evolve and how it would start off messy and how it would look really discordant and chaotic, and then week after week as they came into the classroom, they would see it start to flesh out and pull together and become more refined and more finished. And they would see their work too. They would a lot of times leave their work to dry and then come back the next week and they would get to look at it with fresh eyes. And in this day and age, I don't feel like we have that gift of time anymore, and we have to very specifically find that time and maybe take a picture of the in-progress work and leave it on our phone or on our camera and come back and look at it later. Or maybe as artists, if we are posting our work out there for people to enjoy, maybe take some of those in-progress photos and share them with the finished photos so people can see, look, this is how it started and this is how it ended. So it's not like you just sat down and sneezed onto a canvas and you have this beautiful painting. So people can kind of see how you got there. And obviously we have tutorials that people can watch and kind of see how the sausage is made, if you will. But I think a lot of people are just kind of consuming casually on Instagram and Facebook and maybe seeing a quick 5-second, 10-second reel, maybe a minute-long reel, and having vastly unrealistic expectations of how long things take and how long it will take them to achieve it if they try to create something similar. I found that I have been very self-critical lately, the last few months especially, the last year even, and I don't know what has been fueling this, and I wanted to do this video because I feel like other people may have very similar feelings. A friend of mine commented, wow, you are really self-aware, and I don't think he meant it as a compliment. I think it was like, whoa, you need to step back and calm down, you're being way too critical, you're being way too kind of picky, you're picking at all these little tiny things that people shouldn't even really be picking on, you know what I mean? You're just being a little too fussy. And I've had several people this year, and this is something that I never would call myself and never would even think about calling me a perfectionist or saying this is as a form of perfectionism that you're doing. And I was like, wow, I don't consider myself a perfectionist because I don't believe in perfect. I don't think you ever get to perfect. I think perfect is subjective, like art. All you can do is keep growing, and you're either growing or you're dying. And I think this is just kind of part of this modern pressure that we put ourselves on, and not necessarily good when you take it to those extremes. I think it's good to want to improve and want to get better, but if you can't enjoy the stage that you are at now, if you can't enjoy making a painting at the level you are now, because you're always looking over at the horizon at what it's going to be once you get better, then that's no way to live. I mean, it can be motivating a bit for a while, but I think it can also burn you out. Now, I'm not saying you should just be happy with whatever you're creating all the time, because if you keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, you will get burned out as well. It's a really fine balance to play, but maybe some of these things I'm mentioning will strike a chord with you, and you'll be like, oh yeah, I feel like I keep needing to make something that looks good, so I'm not taking any risks, so I'm getting really bored with my art, and I'm just feeling like I'm burning out, because maybe you are a professional artist, or you're someone who makes YouTube videos for a living, or Instagram reels. I mean, you're watching this video, so I feel that you may be in this same space. Or maybe you are in another profession, but you need to keep creating. Maybe you're a baker and you're creating the same design of a cupcake over and over and over again, and people are loving them, people are buying them, but you're getting bored because you're not experimenting with new flavors or new decorating techniques or new things like that. Maybe you need to bring out a new version every week just to keep yourself interested into, and maybe bringing out that new version will give you an idea, like, oh, what if I added, salted caramel to those chocolate cupcakes, or what if I added some chocolate shavings to those vanilla ones, or what if I added this, or what if I tried a gluten-free version, or what if I tried a vegan version, or what if I tried a low-carb version. Doing different things like that that can keep your interest alive in your profession or your hobby is really important, but not putting so much pressure on yourself that, like, I'm going to try this gluten-free version and it's going to be the best thing ever, or I'm going to be so disgusted with myself that I won't make another thing. No, you don't want that kind of pressure. I feel like creative people need this kind of, I always call it room to fart around. You need this time where you can explore and try different things without the pressure of, I've got to post something today that is amazing, or my followers are going to leave me, or the algorithm isn't going to show my next thing if this flops. And it's really a disservice. It's really a disservice. I've been hearing a lot of creators complain about Instagram reach, and I've never relied on Instagram. I enjoy using Instagram because I think it looks nice. I like looking at other people's still photography. I'm not crazy about the reels. I wish I could opt out of seeing reels on my Instagram, because I just want to look at people's paintings and I want to zoom in. I want to see the details, and I find it's easier to do that on Instagram than, say, watching a YouTube video sometimes, because I can zoom in and it's just really cool to see all the different angles, and I love it. I love consuming people's artwork that way. But I went in and looked at my analytics, because I mean, I don't rely on it. If I might mention about a class that I'm having or something, people might click over and sign up or whatever, but it's not like, it's really hard to get people to leave Instagram, so it's never anything I really hung my hopes and dreams on, getting, well known and well followed on Instagram. So I was looking at my analytics out of curiosity, and my reach was down 30% last month, and it's like, wow, that's strange. I haven't noticed like a lack of comments or anything. I feel like my posts are getting about the same engagement, but like just the amount of people they've showed my posts to has been way down. And I don't have a ton of subscribers for, somebody who's, compared to YouTube or anything, or compared to somebody that makes their living online. But out of 20,000 subscribers, I think maybe it showed my account to 7,000 of them. And so it's kind of like, if people, and I'm posting a couple times a week, so it's not like I'm only posting once a month. So it's like, what are they showing all of these people, and why aren't they showing people who they subscribe to? Obviously, if you, maybe not obviously, if you're on Instagram and if you click on the word Instagram, then you can click following and you can see the people you actually subscribe to, versus a ton of ads and a ton of people that Instagram's trying to push, like reels and things like that, which is nice. I try to remember to do that, and then it's like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen anything from this person in so long. I missed her, or I missed his work, and it's just kind of too bad. And I think that's something we forget. I forget all the time that I don't have control over these social media platforms and what they choose to put in front of people. The only thing I can control is the actual product I put on the platforms. But I can promote it, and I can blog it, and I can send stuff out to my email list, but I really have no control over how the social media platforms are going to distribute these paintings and these tutorials that I post out there. And I think that's also really good for people to to acknowledge and to remind themselves of. If you're an artist and you're trying to get your work noticed online, you can create the best piece of content. And you can create the most beautiful, and I almost feel bad calling it content because we've just reduced our heart, the things that we put our heart and soul into content to be consumed instead of artwork to inspire and to be enjoyed. And it's just like that change of lexicon, I think, has also changed how we see it. We see it almost as a commodity and not as, this is what we love doing. And it kind of separates us from our art a little bit more, and I don't think it's good. I think that it's making us feel like little art making machines instead of artists who want to inspire and who want to, you know, put some of our soul on the paper. And maybe it's a result of living in capitalism. Maybe it's a result of the pressure to turn everything we love into something that we can profit from. I don't know, but I mean, and you know, how many times innocently has somebody said to you, "Oh my gosh, you're so good. Your project is so good. Your earrings are so pretty. Your sweater is so nice. You could sell that." You know, and you can sell that, is people say that as like the highest compliment, right? Like it's good enough that people would pay money for it. But making a living from your work, it can be kind of soul crushing, and getting paid for your time, the amount of time you put in there, is nearly impossible for a lot of different projects like knitting when you're competing against fast fashion or even machine knitted things. And even at high-end stores, if you're buying a sweater, it's expensive, but if you divided up how much time that would take to make, it's still less than minimum wage, you know what I mean? So it's yeah, it's a really high standard, and we're all putting ourselves up to these standards, whether you're an artist trying to make a living online or you're just watching art tutorials because it's your hobby, because you're probably feeling some of that pressure yourself just on your personal accounts. Like maybe you want to share a photo of your baby taking its first steps, and then you're like, look at all that clutter in the background. I guess I'm not going to show that because I don't want people to see that I'm a bad housekeeper or that, you know, I have clutter in my house. One of my favorite things to do is to look through old photos, and I love seeing the clutter on the counter, because people didn't know about cropping things in. Like before people started scrapbooking, people didn't try to get those perfect photos. You just took a photo, right? You weren't really that worried about composition. You were just trying to get the people you loved in your photo. And then you would see, like, you know, maybe there was a spatter on the wall from like somebody cooking the night before, or maybe there was like a bunch of clutter on the counter or dirty dishes, or, you know, I love seeing like photos that were taken in my grandmother's kitchen, because she had 10 children, and a lot of her kids ended up living down the road, because my grandfather was a logger and he had all this land that he would log, and so he would give parcels of land to his kids when they got married or grew up. And so a lot of my aunts and uncles ended up living on that street. So Grammy's house was always, and this was back in the day when a lot of women would be stay-at-home moms. They would raise their kids. They might go back to work after the kids got older, but there was a really high percentage of women in my family that were stay-at-home moms. And like my mother's, her grandparents lived right down the road, and so it was kind of like a road that had all of their relatives, and everyone kind of gathered at my grandmother's kitchen. And so there was always like, they would have, and my grandmother raised 3 of her grandchildren, so there was always just mayhem. There was always clutter out there, because I mean, you've got dozens of people coming in and out of your house constantly every day. So there was always just like, it was always what I would call a beautiful mess. It was always chaos. It was always people there. And I was an only child for quite a while, until I was 6. So there's a huge age difference between me and my sister. And so going from a very quiet, lonely house where both my parents were working most of the time, sometimes I went to work with them because they were self-employed, but going from that almost isolation to the like, wow, people everywhere, this is awesome, kids my age, because my cousins were there. It was just so fun, and I have such fond memories of like summers spent over there. And when I see somebody, like one of my cousins, share a photo that was taken in that kitchen, seeing like, you know, the cups of tea everywhere, and the, you know, the big like bucket of Peter Pan peanut butter sitting on the counter, and the big like the stack of loaves of Wonder Bread, and just like the nobody's putting on airs, nobody's like, you know, making sure there's like, if there's any food in the shot, it's like the most organic, you know, perfect, healthy product that, you know, is ever so carefully set there. You know, it's probably a product placement, guys, when you're seeing stuff like that. You know, it's not like, I mean, look behind me. I've got rainbow ordered paint on a pegboard there, it's actually a piece of foam core with tacks, and if I take one of those off to use it, they will all fall. It is a farce, I tell you, it is. I am just as bad. I am probably worse. You know, I have all my markers arranged in color by color family. That's actually quite useful. But you know, this is set up very deliberately. This puzzle, this was one of my kids' puzzles, and I saved it because I'm like, it's such a pretty little decoration. It's like a little, I wish you could still find these. I got this for my kids when they were little. But anyway, you know, it's just that perfect curated, like if I pan this around, oh, look at the colored pencils. Way more colored pencils than anybody needs. Perfectly curated in rainbow order. So if they're glimpsed in the back of one of my videos, it looks like put together and it's inspiring. And, you know, and I want my videos to look nice. So I have this in the background. But if someone's watching this thinking, oh my word, this is what my art room should look like. My art room is a hot mess. I've got all these mismatched containers. And, well, here, let's look at the reality. The reality is, look, like these cubbies. These cubbies here, I've got a random amount of things that are very useful. All this, look at this box. I've got like hairspray and baggie of Q-tips and just like tomato trays that I use for stuff when I'm working. You know, I've got saran wrap and, you know, just boxes of clutter, but it's all really handy, useful clutter. But I don't want that. I don't want that in the shot because that's not pretty. That's not, you know, what I want to put out into the world. And I think maybe we should first acknowledge that what people are putting into the world is not, you're seeing the highlight reels. And if you're finding yourself so self-critical, maybe you want to make YouTube videos or you want to make tutorials or you want to teach a class, but you're like, I don't like the way I look. I don't like the way my background looks. I don't know if my art is good enough. I think that's a disservice because think of the people that won't be able to be inspired by what you have to offer because you're letting that comparison get in the way of you posting things. If you're not posting I can understand not posting family photos out of privacy concerns. Absolutely. I rarely posted pictures of my kids, even on my personal Facebook page because of that. I was always just so worried about things like that. Even in scrapbook pages, I rarely would post a scrapbook page. But if you're not posting because you're afraid that your room looks messy or your house isn't as pristine as somebody else's, or maybe your kids got chocolate on their face or something and you're like, oh, people are going to judge me. I really think that's a shame. It's a shame that you're almost cutting people out of your lives because you're afraid that it's not perfect enough. I mean, I've been horrified when a friend has shown up or a family member has shown up at my doorstep and I wasn't expecting them and I've got like a mess on the coffee table or stuff on the floor or a sink full of dirty dishes. So I get that. But they're not here to visit my house or my sink full of dishes. They're not here to, like, you know, photograph a spread for Architectural Digest. They're here to visit me or my family, and I definitely should remember that when somebody comes to the door unannounced. And I'm sure we all know this, right? We all know this deep in our hearts, but we have this irrational side of us that is fueled by what we see online that says, nope, that's not good enough. You're not good enough. Your hair's a mess. You don't have makeup on. Your artwork isn't as good as what you just saw, so why bother? And that is such a shame. That is such a shame. And a lot of times I think we can have almost a skewed perspective of our art. We may be thinking it's not good enough, but it's beautiful and it absolutely is good enough, but we're only picking apart the negatives and we're seeing the mistake. We're seeing mistakes that were made 3 layers ago that don't even show up anymore, but it's in our brain. We're seeing that and we're like, oh, can't show that. That's not perfect. And to that I would say, put the work away, come back in a week and look at it again. Like my students who would leave their paintings in the studio to dry and they would come back a week later and see and be surprised at how good it looks, right? We're not giving ourselves that time. We are constantly judging ourselves. We're judging our middle by somebody else's finished product, and it's not fair. It's not fair to us, and it's gonna handicap us. It's gonna handicap our progress if we're constantly criticizing ourselves before we've even done the thing yet, when we're criticizing our in-betweens and comparing it against somebody's finished product. Do you know how long somebody else has been working at this craft? Are you a beginner and you're judging your work against somebody that's been painting or doing whatever for 20 years? Are you judging the way your house looks compared to a spread you see in a magazine? And see, that's the thing. When you would see a article in a magazine, you know that it's lit and it's professionally photographed and it's been staged, and you know that, like, when you see a supermodel in a magazine, that they've been made up and they've been airbrushed and they don't even look like that. But when we see it online from real people, we feel like, well, this is how it's supposed to look. These are real people. They're regular people. They're relatable. They're attainable. But what you're not seeing is the filter. What you're not seeing is what's just beyond the camera frame. Where did they shove all that mess so they could talk to you like this? When we don't acknowledge that, we put ourselves up to unreachable standards. Have you ever seen those photos where they compare, like a Sports Illustrated swimsuit shoot, they'll compare what the photo is originally versus how it is edited? I mean, they've like stretched out these women's bodies, they've smoothed out any cellulite, they've wiped out any stretch marks, and that's what we see and we compare ourselves to. Now in a magazine, we kind of know that, okay, this isn't reality, but when we see it online in our feed, when we see a celebrity right next to one of our friends posting something, it blurs those lines, and it makes us judge ourselves way too harshly. And I have been judging myself way too harshly. And I just want to put this video out there to say, if you are in that same boat, if you are judging yourself like that, please be kinder to yourself. Don't say something to yourself that you wouldn't say to your best friend. I'm going to try not to say something to myself that I wouldn't say to you, because I care about you and I don't want you to not post your work and not create work. I mean, if you don't want to post it, don't post it. I don't think that's necessarily the healthiest thing to do, is post your work all the time. But if it's keeping you from creating because you don't think it's good enough, like, what's the point? What do I have to offer this world? It's all been done before. Other people are doing it better than me. Why should I even bother? If you are feeling like that, it does not matter. It does not matter what anybody else thinks of your work. If you enjoy making the work, you wouldn't say, I'm not going to eat anymore because I'm not a good cook. I can't cook as good as, that food I got at the restaurant. I can't. That's ridiculous. No, you would eat food because it nourishes your soul and because you're hungry and because it's pleasurable, right? You wouldn't worry about being the best cook ever. You would do the thing because it's natural and it's something your body needs to survive. And I think art and creativity is like that too. We need it to survive. It certainly makes life a heck of a lot better if we find a way to create. I interviewed my friend Marty Owens for a podcast, and he said, we're better when we create than when we destroy. And when you aren't creating because you're telling yourselves negative things, you're destroying your creativity. You're destroying your soul a bit. Even though you may be thinking, I'm trying to be better. I'm trying to be my best. That's something I say all the time. I just want to be the best version of myself. Or I'll be like, I was not the best version of myself this week, and I'll be like beating myself up about it. It's like, just stop. Just stop. You were the best version of yourself you could be at that moment. We're all doing our best. And sometimes we're tired, and resting or just giving our sum is the best we can do in that moment, and that is okay. So I just want you to, if you're comparing, if it's keeping you from creating, just cut it out. Just give yourself a break. Just give yourself a hug and make some art. It doesn't have to be good art. It doesn't have to be bad art. It doesn't have to be recognizable, and it doesn't even have to be what you might call art. It could just be, making a sandcastle, or playing with some clay, or knitting, or crocheting, or coloring in a coloring book page, or making a greeting card to send to someone you love. Because it's that creation, however you do it, that's going to feed your soul and make you feel good. And if looking at pictures on social media or looking through magazines are not inspiring you and they're making you feel bad about what you're creating, it's okay not to. It's okay to turn off the YouTube. It's okay to turn off your phone. In fact, it's probably a good idea to take a break from this technology once in a while and try to get into that flow state and try to just be happy with reality. I was listening to a podcast from the man that wrote the book Stolen Focus. I do intend to read the book or listen to the audiobook at some point, but he was talking about how many times we get interrupted during a day that when we're working, and a lot of times we can't even give ourselves that time to create because we're going to be constantly hey, hey you, hey, look at this, hey, hey, and your phone just does that in your pocket all the time. Like, hey, here's the thing, don't you want to know if somebody said something about you? Don't you want to know if somebody reacted to this? Better check who called, better check who texted, better check, better see, better do, better look, you know, instead of just being quiet and in your own thoughts and in the flow state and in the zone and creating without judgment. Yeah, more creation, less destruction, more creation, less consumption. You are worthy of creating, you are worthy of sharing if you want to share your work, and try not to criticize yourself so much. I'm a work in progress in that department. Maybe you're struggling with it too, and that's all I wanted to say. That's all this video is about. I don't know when I'm going to post it. I don't know if I'm going to post it, but if I do, it's because I think that people might need to hear it, and I'm willing to put myself out there on the line, vulnerable, and hope that it makes others feel a little bit better about this this crazy journey that we're all on as creatives. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you. Please give me a thumbs up if you enjoy videos like this. Until next time, happy crafting. Bye.